Shalom, beloveds of the King. Here we continue today looking at the tribe of Ephraim and also understanding the tribe of Ephraim by being able to look at the tribe of Joseph. And so let us pray. Abba Yahuah, I just want to praise you and I just want to thank you, Father, for this day. And I thank you for this teaching of the understanding and the revelation that you're giving us in this time to understand this end time tribe, to understand that once again Ephraim is seen as a house, and this is part of the great work that you are doing in this hour, because this is the tribe that will come of the end times of the 7th month. And so even though we're looking at Ephraim as being a tribe that comes from the tribe of Joseph, but Ephraim was going to be seen as a house, and it was going to be made up of those 10 lost tribes of the house of Israel. And so, Father, I praise and I thank you that you will lead us, that you will guide us, that you put the words in my mouth that I am to speak, and that you will just take us through this teaching. Open up the mind of our understanding. Open up our heart, Father. I pray that you alone will lead me and guide me, that the words that I speak will only be your words, and that you will open up the mind of our understanding in order to understand this prophetic tribe for the season and the time of the 7th month, which will be time of when the millennial reign is going to take place, for us to be able to understand that everything is this great love story that you have been speaking about, gathering a house unto yourself. So, my Father, I praise and I thank you that you alone will lead us and guide us through this teaching in Yahushua's name. Hallelujah. So we are going to look at Genesis chapter 49, and we're starting in verse 22, where we're going to look at the blessing. We've already looked at when that Ephraim was called doubly blessed, and that Manasseh was called to, called to forget, that, he will forget all his suffering, and Joseph means added to. And therefore, we are looking at the blessing over Joseph, because Joseph would be made up of these two tribes. So in verse 22, it says, Joseph is an offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree, an offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree by a fountain. Understand, twice in this scripture, it tells you that it is the fruit-bearing tree, and it is an offshoot. Now that word, the offshoot, is also the word that we will get in the Hebrew, which means ben, which means baneh, which means a son, which means an anointed one, a builder of a family name, as well as a offshoot of a tree. So this is important for us to understand, that Yahushua is the one known as the branch, and this is the branch which is going to be like Yahushua was the root of Jesse that was to come forth, and understanding that Joseph is going to portray Yosef it's Ben Yosef. Yahushua comes as the suffering servant of Ben Yosef, and then he's the conquering king of Ben David. So it's interesting how in these two tribes, the two tribes that really have the most powerful blessings that is on them, Joseph being one that's going to be added to, that out of Joseph was chosen two of his sons were chosen to be part of the house of Israel, where Jacob actually took them in as his own children and made them part of the house. So much was the blessing. So Joseph, the fruit-bearing tree, it's the tree that is going to have to bear fruit. It's a fruitful, anointed son. So it's a fruitful son by a fountain of water, so that water will come from this well, that there's going to be this fountain of wealth that's going to come out of this tribe of Joseph, out of the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, specifically Ephraim, because Ephraim has the blessing of being doubly blessed. That this is where then it says his branches run over the wall. So it will go over. It's going to be able to multiply. It's going to run over. So it's like when your cup runs over, it's double portion. It's double portion blessing. And it is the tribe that's going to overflow. So there's going to be an overflow, an abundance of blessing. But like I said in the previous teaching, the Father many times, when we have suffered a lot, if you take even in the book of Job, Job suffered at the hand of the enemy. And the Father allowed him to go through that suffering. But at the end of Job, he multiplied double to what he had lost. And so the same as Joseph, because of Joseph's obedience, the Father will give him double portion for that which he has had to go through. And verse 23 says, and the archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. So this is the archers. These archers are actually being seen. They are the word that in Hebrew is the word chetz. And it means a piercer, an arrow, a wound, a shaft, a spear. So it is wounding and the suffering. And so this is the wounding and the suffering that the tribe of Manasseh, that the tribe of Ephraim, that the tribe of Joseph will go through. So basically, they will be united. They are a tribe that is united in the suffering that will be of Messiah, because Joseph is known as Messiah ben Joseph, the suffering servant. So that's where Yahushua wears the crown of thorns. That's the suffering servant that came to be able to be the perfect lamb that was slain for us. And he suffers at the hand of his own family. He suffers at the hand of his own, because his own are the ones that rejected him. His own are the ones that pierced him. His own are the ones that sold Joseph into slavery. It was his own brothers. And so at the end of the day, when we are united in the suffering of Yahushua, those archers, these archers that come, that have bitterly grieved Joseph, grieved the tribe of Ephraim, they are those of your own family. So it's when your own family turns against you. It's when your own family wants to be able to come and hurt you. There's nothing that hurts more than those that are closest to you. So it's when those that are closest to you will betray you, will hurt you, will flog you, will sell you out, like Judas Iscariot that sold out Yahushua of his own, came to sell him out. And so these are the archers of what Joseph had to go through, of what Ephraim will go through. So those that are of the tribe of Ephraim are going to have their own basically turn against them, their own family members, their own people. Like, for example, if you are a believer, it will be even those of your own that will you walk with, like Yahushua, that will turn against you, that will become the archers. But his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty one. So even though that very bow that was being used against them, so even when he turned around and he said to his brothers, you meant it for bad, but Abba Yahuah meant it for the good. Because if he had not gone through all of that, he would not have been able to be the deliverer that needed to be raised up in order to deliver Israel in order to deliver the nations of the world in a time of when there was going to be great famine. So the Father uses these people in order to raise up from the suffering, from everything that they've had to go through, to raise them up in the last days, to be able to be deliverers for those that are going to come, that is going to be able to be raised up in these last days. So even that which comes against us, so even though the enemy comes in like a flood, the Father will raise the standard against him, and the Father will turn all things around for those that love him and are called according to his purpose. All things work together for good for those that love him and are called according to his purpose. And so even though there is many enemies that will come up against the tribe of Ephraim, from the house of Joseph, Abba Yahuah will use his strong hand in order to be able to accomplish the tasks that he's called for them to be able to do. So then we look at where he says, they are strong by the hand of the mighty one of Yaakov, for there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. So already we are seeing that who is the stone? Yahushua would become the cornerstone. So Yahushua was going to become the cornerstone that was going to become the one that was going to be able to die and resurrect. And he was the cornerstone that the builders were going to reject. So his own people were going to reject him as being the Messiah, the one that came, the one that laid down his life. So even though Joseph, even with his brothers, was sharing dreams, maybe prematurely, maybe he should have kept them to himself, but even as he shared these dreams with them, they, instead of being able to listen and see the prophetic behind what they were saying, they hated him. They turned against him. They flogged him. They sold him. And just the same as what happened to our Messiah. So Messiah is being seen in both tribes. And that's what I want you to understand. Because we are going to see that these are two houses that even though Messiah Yahushua comes from the tribe of Yehudah, but he's going to take on the characteristics of Joseph, because he's going to be is going to be the suffering servant coming out of the tribe of Joseph, but he's going to be the conquering king coming out of Judah, which is going to make up the fullness of the house of Israel, because Yahushua is the one that's going to be the king over the fullness of the house. So Jacob, whose life was that of a shepherd, was lifted in the spirit in this time of when he gave the revelation, that when he was giving this prophecy that there was going to be only one chief shepherd, and he was going to be the rock of the house of Israel, that Joseph is going to be able to be part of. So we read in verse 25, from the owl of your father who helps you, and by the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the heavens from above, blessings from the deep that lies beneath, blessings from the breasts and from the womb. The blessings of your father have excelled the blessing of my ancestors up to the limit of the everlasting hills. They are on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him who was separated from his brothers. So here we are going to see that he receives the fullness of the blessings. He receives the fullness of the rain, of the sunshine, of the wealth, of that which comes from the minerals, from the ground, from the gemstones, from the fountains of the deep, the fertile ground. And this is the fullness. So he receives the fullness that comes of the blessings that come from the heavens and that comes from the ground. So Joseph is a tribe that truly the Father will bless with the wealth that will come in, that they will be able to raise up in the kingly anointing, those that will be able to bring in the wealth that comes from the earth and the wealth that comes from the heavens. So they will walk in the fullness of the wealth. And then there's the deep, the things that come from the deep. So it's not only just the blessings of financial blessings, but there's also the blessings that comes from the spiritual blessings, that they will receive great insight that comes from the heavens, that comes from our Father, and that comes from the earthly things, that they will walk in great authority and power, because they, on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him, who was separated from his brothers. So there will be a blessing that is going to be able to come, that comes from the fact that they will raise up to be kings, to be those that will be able to be in a kingly line, that will raise up in, that's why I'm saying that especially the kings of the earth that will really have the financial wealth. A lot of them are like Joseph, that will have the wealth. But at the same time, from this tribe is going to raise up those that are going to be able to have this tremendous, there will be kings that will come forth from that. And Yahushua being a king himself. But we will understand as we look at Jeroboam that there will be a king that will come from Jeroboam. So in all of this, Jacob is saying that the blessings that Joseph's father has given him are greater than the blessings which he's received from his own forefathers. So he's receiving a greater portion because, like I said, he's going to be able to receive the blessings that comes not from the name of Jacob, but that's going to come from the house of Israel. So it's going to be Israel, the one that's going to overcome the one that reigns with El. So he's going to receive the blessing that's going to be able to come from the one that is when Jacob wrestled and he becomes not Jacob, but he becomes Israel. And it's interesting because Ephraim is going to symbolize the house of Israel. And so when we look at on the crown of the head of him who was separated from his brothers. So in this place of where he was separated from his brothers, that word separate comes from the Hebrew word nasir. And it means to separate, to consecrate, which is the same word used for the Nazarite. So it's the same word of where the Nazarite vow, where the Nazarite is separated, consecrated unto the Father. So it is a calling for the children of Joseph to have a life that's going to be a life of separation, a life of set apartness for the Father. And so the Ephraimites are called to a holy, set apart life that will be able to cost their lives if they have to. So it doesn't matter how great the cost, they will be those that will be separated unto the Father. So let's go now look at the prophecy of Moses. Now it's interesting because when we look at the prophecy that we have of Moses, and we look at the prophecy of Jacob, it's a very similar prophecy. And it's just amazing because Moses came so much after Yaakov, but yet in the spirit, they were speaking the same very similar word. And so when we look at the blessing that comes from Moses, and it's in Deuteronomy chapter 33 and from verses 13, and it says, and of Joseph he said, blessed of Yahuah is his land with the choicest from the heavens with the dew and the deep lying beneath. So again, it's the blessing that comes from the heavens. It's the blessing that comes from the dew, the rain from the heavens. So those fountains, that the dew that comes from the heavens and the deep lying beneath. So here again, we are seeing that once again, they have this double portion blessing that comes from the heavenly realm, that comes from the earthly realm. So they get the heavenly blessings because they get the revelation and the understanding of the heavenly realm in the intimacy and in the walking close with the Father to have the revelations that comes from the heavenly realm, but they also walk in the blessings of the physical, earthly realm that comes from the things beneath, that comes from the riches, that comes from the earth, the minerals, the wealth, the blessings. It's again this double portion with the choice fruits of the sun, with the choice yield of the months. Now this is so powerful when the Father opened this up to me. With the choice fruits, that is why, you see, they are to be the fruitful. That's why Joseph is the tribe, Ephraim is the tribe that is actually the tribe that is attached to the 7th month, because it's the fruitfulness. This is the month of when there is the feasts, the fall feasts, the feast of tabernacles, the feast of where we tabernacle, the feast of where our fruit is going. It's the fruit harvest. It's the harvest of the fruit of our lives. And this is the fruits of the sun with the choice yielding of the months. Now, it's interesting because that word months is the word yerach, which is actually the lunar moon. So yeah, it is so powerful because we see months, but that word months is actually the word moon. So it yields from the sun and it yields of the moon. So it's of the lunar cycle. It's the lunation. It's the month. That's the lunar cycle. So beloveds, how does the house of Ephraim go and negate the moon? How do they only abide by the sun? You have to abide by the sun and by the moon, because the month is, the day is established according to the sun, but the month is established according to the moon. And that is going to be what the Father says in Jeremiah chapter 31, that the moon is not going, just as the moon has its laws, so will Israel not cease to be a nation. And that is why these people that follow this calendar, that's this Enoch calendar, and they negate the moon altogether, what are they doing? They will actually disqualify themselves from being part of a house that has to do with the blessing that comes from the sun and that comes from the moon. And that is why these people that are raising up this remnant bride is a bride that understands his seasons and his times. Because the Ephraimites are those that have gone into the nations, and they're not just coming back into being able to follow blindly. They're coming back into the truth of coming back into the truth of the word on how to be able to serve the Father through the lunar calendar, through being able to look at a moon, through being able to understand the seasons and the times in order to serve the Father in the feasts. And so this is what we've got to understand, that there is going to be the two houses that will come together, Judah and Ephraim that comes together. Ephraim representing the house of Israel. But understand, the Father has raised this house up to be a powerful house that will also know his fullness, his seasons, and his times. And so it says, and with the finest of the ancient mountains, with the choicest of the everlasting hills, with the choicest of the earth, all that fills it, and good pleasure of him who dwelt in the bush. So understand, here we see with the goodwill of him that dwelt in the bush, and with the good pleasure of him that dwelt in the bush. Here we see that Moses is referring to a great visitation with Yahushua, just with Abba Yahuah, with Yahushua, just like Moses had that visitation with the burning bush. Because when you go look up that word bush is the same word as the one of the burning bush. It's the word senal, and it's a thorny bush. It's a burning bush. And he reveals himself to this tribe, himself personally. He reveals himself. And that is what we're going to see as one of the Ephraimites, that we will understand that they are a people that he will greatly visit and that he will raise up in these last days. And so everyone that has this encounter with Abba Yahuah, and that is why the promise is there that we are to be able to enter into this place of being able to have this visitation, that we can become those tabernacles that will have his where he will dwell, because that's what Sukkot is about. It's about him coming to dwell with us on the earth. So we want to have our tabernacle becoming a habitation and not just a visitation. But this is what the Father wants, for this people to be able to raise up and have this dwelt in the bush that they are going to have. So with the finest of the ancient mountains, with the choicest of the everlasting hills, that he's going to give the abundance of this visitation, because this is an end time company of people that are going to have to reflect the Father's presence to the world. And so he says, let it come on the head of Yosef and on the crown of the head of him who was separated from his brother. So once again, we see that it talks about the crown. Once again, we see that this is going to be a family line. This is going to be, Abba Yahuah is going to complete the dedication of this family line, that he is going to be able to raise up this people like Joseph that had to suffer. And because of that which he suffered, Abba is going to be able to bring glory through him, which he did. And we will understand that there's going to be much glory that will come, especially from the house of Ephraim, and that the Father is going to be able to give them the double portion for the suffering of what they have had to do because of the separation that they were from their father, from their brothers, from their family. And his splendor is like a firstborn bull, and his horns are like the horns of a wild ox. So understand, there's going to be the splendor of the firstborn bull, which is the dedication that is given to it's the firstborn of the bull that is what is used for them to be able to, the firstborn is what is dedicated to the Father. And so Joseph, this tribe, is going to be like a first fruits that is going to raise up for the Father, because there's going to be a first fruits harvest in the end times. First fruits harvest that's going to come forth. And this is to be dedicated. And so like the horns of a wild ox. And so even though it's a wild ox, the Father is going to be able to use them to do great exploits upon the earth. With them he pushes the peoples to the ends of the earth. So do you see, this is the nations, because out of Ephraim was going to come the nations, because they were going to be the double portion, and there was going to come out of them the tribes, a people that would be for the nations. And so this is those that's going to go out into the nations. And that's why he says and with them, he pushes the peoples to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim. So do you see, this is where Ephraim comes from the 10,000s, there's going to be the 10,000s that are going to come from Ephraim, and then the thousands from Manasseh, because Ephraim is the one that got the double portion. And out of Ephraim is going to come the fullness of the nations, because out of Ephraim is going to come a house that's going to be called the house of Israel. And so we will understand this. So let's go look at some of these powerful Ephraimite understanding of Ephraim, that we can understand this. So we look at Joshua. So the very first one that we're going to look at, Joshua, the first one that an Ephraimite, we are going to look at Joshua, because Joshua came from the tribe of Ephraim, and Joshua was one of the most powerful men in history in terms of going to battle. He only lost a battle. So, because was when it was the battle against Ai, because there was sin in the camp. And so a set-apart Ephraimite cannot bear to live with sin in the camp. An Ephraimite does not want sin in the camp. They are those that are going to come out of Babylon, fully come out of Babylon, because they don't want sin in the camp. And so we see that they are the ones that, Joshua stood and he spent the night before the Father and wanting to know what was wrong, why they lost the battle. Because Joshua was a man that when he went to battle, the Father was giving him territory, because the Father rose up Joshua. And so if we go look, let's just look at Joshua so that we can have a look from Joshua chapter 1 from verses 2, and it says, "And Moshe my servant is dead. So now arise, pass over the Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, to the children of Israel." So understand, the Father rose up Joshua, that was from the tribe of Ephraim. "Every place on which the sole of your foot treads, I have given you, as I spoke to Moshe." Now understand, Moshe came from the tribe of Levi. He was from the priestly line. He was a priest, but he was a powerful leader. Yet he chose Joshua as opposed to choosing someone from the tribe of Levi to be able to come and lead. He chose Joshua, and whose name is Yahushua. So understand, already when we're going to look at this house, we're going to understand that the Father's always been bringing this picture together. So he says, "Every place on which the sole of your foot treads, I give you, as I spoke to Moshe." So understand, he's getting the blessing like Levi, where he's been given every place where he puts the foot of his sole of his foot, he's been given the land. "From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even as far as the great river, the river Euphrates." So he was the leader of the whole of the house of Israel. "All the land of the Hittites and the great sea towards the going down of the sun is your border. No man is going to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moshe, so I am with you. I do not fail you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you are to let this people inherit the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, to guard to do according to all the Torah which Moshe my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it right or left, so that you act wisely wherever you go." So for this end time Ephraimite bride, what do they have to do? They have to not allow the Torah to depart from their mouth. They are to be able to meditate on it day and night. Now, in our case, it's not just the first 5 books of this Torah, we've got this word from Genesis to Revelation. And so that you guard to do, so that you shama, so that you hear and that you obey. To guard to do is the word shama, that you have to guard to hear and to obey all that is written in it, for then you shall make your way prosperous and act wisely. So there's the condition to the Ephraimites. If you will put the word into practice, you will receive that blessing. You will be prosperous and you will be wise. Have I not commanded you? So it's this chasak amatz, that we have to be chasak amatz, that we have to be strong and courageous. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid nor be discouraged, for Yahuah your Lord is with you wherever you go. And so we see that Joshua is the one that with Caleb stood against in the valley Ashkol. So when they went and spied out the land in the valley Ashkol, this was one of his greatest tests, as it was for Caleb, because they were the ones that went in and they were the only 2 that stood with a report of where we want to go and take the Goliath down. We want to go take these giants down. We want to go take these giants and we want to take them down. And so that was a great test for Joshua, a great test for Caleb. Now look how amazing this is. Joshua represents the tribe of Ephraim, and Caleb was the tribe of Judah. But interesting, Caleb was not an original Judite. He was grafted in to the house, but he did not originally, he actually came out of the nations, but was grafted in. And they are the 2 that entered into the promised land. The only 2 out of the fullness of all those that came out of Egypt, only 2 entered the land. And they are the 2 that are going to make up the fullness of the house of Israel, which will be the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Judah. And it's interesting because Caleb is the one that was not a true Judite, yet he had the boldness. He was the one that carried that boldness to say, no, let us go in and destroy these giants. And so we see the character of Joshua. We see the character of the Ephraimite tribe that is willing to stand like Joseph stood against Potiphar's wife. So we see how Joshua is standing against all the people and is willing to be able to be faithful to what the Father has laid on his heart. And so in this place, we see that Joshua was a man that loved to spend. So even when we look at the scriptures, that even when Moses would go up the mountain, that Joshua would stay, and he would stay longer in the presence of the Father. He was very humble. He was a very obedient servant. And he was, when the Father exalts the humble. So he was obedient to Moses in everything that Moses asked him to do. He was obedient. He was there to be able to follow him. He was there to be obedient to him. He was there to do everything that he asked him to do. He was there. So the key to greatness has always been humility. Most of us forget that the greatest gift that we have is to be able to have humility. And so that is why when Moses died, Joshua was the one that was lifted up. Why? Father saw the heart of Joshua. Joshua was this leader that didn't come from the tribe. He was an Ephraimite, but yet he saw the leadership in him. He saw how he was serving the Father. So we see how the Father really lifted up Joshua, and we see that Joshua truly walks in the promises of Ephraim with blessing upon blessing, prosperity and blessing that comes to Joshua as the Father raised him up. And so Ephraim must walk in absolute obedience to Abba Yahuah, so that he does not turn from Abba to the left or to the right, but that he will stay obedient to his Torah, to his laws, for him to be able to walk in holiness. So that he needs to be able to be set apart unto the Father, to get the riches that comes from the heavens, to get the riches that comes from the ground. So Abba gives Ephraim a special calling in order to be able to understand that he needs to meditate on this word. He needs to know his word. He needs to meditate on the word, and he's going to be able to receive that wealth, and he's going to prosper if he stays with that which the Father has blessed him with. So now we are going to look at another very powerful story of understanding the tribe of Ephraim. And we're going to look at 1 Samuel. So let's go to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 1. And yeah, we are going to see, and this really blew me away again. And in 1 Samuel chapter 1, from verses 1, and it says, "And there was a certain man of Ramathim, Sophim, of the mountains of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, son of Jeroboam, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Tzuf, an Ephraimite. And he had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children." So here we see Hannah, and Hannah means grace. It means to be gracious. It means to show favor. It means merciful. It means have pity. So once again, the Father is going to show mercy, grace, have pity. And he has pity on Hannah. But what is going to come out of Hannah? And this is what we've got to see in this, in this that we're going to look at now. So we really see the heart of an Ephraimite woman. This woman that really cried out before the Father. This woman that was weeping before the Father because of the fact that she did not bear a child. And in verse 11 from chapter 1 we see, and she says, "And she made a vow and said, O Yahuah of hosts, if you would indeed look on the affliction of my female servant and remember me, and not forget your female servant, but shall give your female servant a male child, then I shall give him to Yahuah all the days of his life, and let no razor come upon his head." So Samuel would become also a Nazirite to the Father. He was going to be dedicated to the Father. And so here we see that then she comes and she cries out, and the Father comes and he blesses her with the child. And she waits until the child is then going to be able to be then, when he's no longer when he's weaned off his mother, then she comes and she's going to be able to then get this child to be able to be dedicated to, he's going to be dedicated to the Father. So, yeah, in chapter 2, we see the most beautiful prayer that Hannah is going to pray. And, from verses 1 to verse 10, she prays the most beautiful prayer, and we really see the heart of this Ephraimite woman and the heart of Ephraim and how she prays. Now, what is interesting is that by the time we get to 1 Samuel chapter 2 from verse 35, and Abba Yahuah speaks, and he says, "And I shall raise up for myself a trustworthy priest who does according to what is in my heart and in my being. And I shall build him a steadfast house, and he shall walk before my anointed forever." Now what is interesting, here the Father raises up Samuel. And once again, Samuel is the only one that becomes a prophet, a priest, and a judge. So you'll have Gideon, that was a judge. You'll have Deborah, that was a prophet, and she was a judge. But only Samuel, which was the last judge that they had. And Samuel walked in the office of all three. He was a prophet, he was a priest, and he was a judge. Now, isn't it amazing? The Father did not raise up a Levite again. He did not raise up someone that came from the house of another Levitical priest. He didn't raise up the sons of Eli. As a matter of fact, he brought a death, Ichabod. He removed his presence from the house of Eli, and he brought it to an end, that whole order of the house of Eli, because of the wickedness of his children, and he removed the glory from the house. And then he rose up Samuel. But Samuel did not come from a bloodline that was the bloodline of a Judite. He didn't come from a bloodline that was the bloodline of an Levite. He rose up as a bloodline that was the bloodline of an Ephraimite. He was from the tribe of Ephraim. And once again, the Father now raises up Samuel, who then comes and anoints the two kings. But the king that is important, because the king that's going to be anointed, that from that king is going to come the King of Kings, is going to be from Judah. That will be David. From the Lion of the tribe of Judah, that will come from David. But you see, Judah is then going to be able to then eventually be a very small tribe, where Ephraim, the house of Israel, is going to be the bigger house that's going to come, because from Joseph was extended to the nations. It was from as far, they were sent out to the nations. And this is where the Father is going to bring in the bigger house. And that is why Yahushua came, to bring in that bigger house. But this was what was so powerful to understand, that but yet the Father did not continue with the house of Samuel, because Samuel's children were also wicked, and the Father did not allow them to raise up then and be the priests that would be able to serve in the house. So then they rose up a king. They wanted a king. And so Samuel continued to be the prophet, continued to be the priest and the judge that was having to be able to judge Israel at the time of King Saul. And then he was the prophet that anointed David in order to raise up David. And he was there for the time of David and walking with David. And so here again, we see the coming together of this house, the coming together of the house of Ephraim, of the blessing that was upon Joseph, as Joseph being the firstborn of Rachel. And even though we see Reuben was the firstborn of Leah, it was Reuben lost the firstborn blessing, and it was in turn given to Judah. But we see all along that the Father had a plan with Joseph as being the firstborn of the one who opened the womb of Rachel. And so that in his way, the Father honored him in raising him up, in being able to be a house that is going to raise up. And that's why there's going to be these two houses that we're going to need to understand. So let us go and have a look at some of the sins of Ephraim in the time of Joshua. So let's look at Joshua chapter 17. In Joshua chapter 17, and we're going to look at Joshua chapter 17 from verses 12 to 18. And the children of Manasseh were unable to drive out the inhabitants of those cities, for the Canaanites desired to dwell in that land. And it came to be, when the children of Israel grew strong, that they put the Canaanites to compulsory labor, but did not utterly drive them out. So do you see, beloveds, if we do not drive out the enemy from our land, from our houses, from our temples, then that enemy will become the very thing that will control us, and they will be the ones that will enslave us in the end to be able to serve them. So out of our lands, we need to drive out all the enemies that are in our lands. All the strongholds that we have in our land is what we need to be able to drive out. And it says, and it came to be, when the children of Israel grew strong, that they put the Canaanites to compulsory labor, but did not utterly drive them out. And the children of Joseph spoke to Yahushua, saying, why have you given us but one lot, one portion to inherit, seeing we are great people whom Yahuah has blessed until now? So you see, this is now when Ephraim stands. This is now when the Ephraimites stand and say to Joshua, but we are a great people. Why do you want to give us a small piece of land? But look at what Joshua does. And Joshua said to them, if you are a great people, so if you are the great people that you say that you are, so this is the danger of these Ephraimites, that we mustn't become conceited and arrogant and filled with pride based on the fact that the Father blesses us in the place of where we walk. We have to stay humble, like Joshua had to stay humble before the Father, and we have to seek him for his wisdom in everything. And it says, and Yahushua said to them, if you are a great people, go up to the forest and clear a place for yourself there in the land of the Perizzites and the Rephites, since the hill country of Ephraim is too narrow for you. Then the children of Joseph said, this hill country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who dwell in the land of the valley have chariots of iron, both those who are of Beth Shean and its towns, and those who are of the valley of Yezreel. And Yahushua spoke to the house of Joseph, to Ephraim and to Manasseh, saying, you are a great people and have great power. You are not to have one lot, for the hill country shall be yours. For though it is a forest, you shall cut it down, and its furthest limit shall be yours. For you are to drive out the Canaanites, though they have iron chariots and are strong. So you see, Joshua goes and encourages them and tells them, if you are the great people, drive out the Canaanites and take your land. So understand, just like he had to face the people and say, we can face these giants, he's standing on behalf of his own tribe and saying, go and destroy the giants in the land, because we said that that's what we would do. So you see, the Father doesn't want to give Ephraim the land without having to pay for it, without having to go to a battle for it. So Ephraim must fight for their land to be able to learn to be fearless of the giants in it, because they were fearful of Yahuah and told Manasseh to help them in the battle. So when the battle took place, they went and they asked Manasseh to help them in the battle, and they were able to then fight. So there are giants in our land, in our past, in each one of us, that we need to fight and we need to conquer in order for us to be able to take territory for the Father. So with every battle, with every strong thing with every battle that we got to go through, there is a purpose why the Father will bring the battles in our lives so that we can overcome those giants, so that we can clean those strongholds in our own life so that we can overcome. So we need to be able to possess territory that we have to fight for. So we have to fight through warfare, through fasting, through prayer, through tears, through sacrificing. And this is what we will see, that we, as the house of Ephraim, is going to have to fight through prayer, through much repentance, in order to return back to the land that we were divorced from our land, and we have to fight in the spirit in order to come back. And we will understand this more clearly as we are going to have to then understand this house. So we have to understand that we have to drive out of our lives everything that comes from that strongholds of Egypt. Because remember, in the tribe of Ephraim, the mother, the half of them. So the father was Joseph, but the mother was the Egyptian that came serving Canaanite or these Egyptian gods. And in us is the tendency to have that which is there in this broader house of Ephraim, the one that's gone into the dispersion. We are going to have to come out of all sun god worship. We will have to come out of everything that holds us captive in a religious system to be set free from all of that. So, praise the Father. We have to understand that we will get the victory. So, when we are united in the battle as a house, we are going to overcome the giants and we will win the victory. Because Ephraim didn't just give them the land. He said, go cut down the trees and drive out the Canaanites. You have to drive out those giants out of your land so that you can have territory. So if we want to take the kingdom for the Father, we have to take it by force, because that's what it's going to take. So we will continue again with the next one.